Stolen credentials, configuration leaks, education breaches, and energy sector risks. This is Cybersecurity Today. I'm your host, Jim Love. Thousands of credentials from leading cybersecurity vendors have been found for sale on the dark web in marketplaces, according to security researchers at Cybersecurity. Cybersecurity didn't name the affected vendors due to security implications, but the data included passwords for internal systems, customer accounts, and cloud-based environments, putting both the vendors and their clients at risk. Cybersecurity's report notes that many of the stolen credentials were tied to recent breaches, making the threat particularly urgent. Some of these credentials allow access to management and developer systems, which attackers can use to locate sensitive data and exploit vulnerabilities. These included systems like Okta, Jira, GitHub, AWS, Microsoft Online, Salesforce, SolarWinds, Box, WordPress, Oracle, and Zoom, plus several other password managers, authentication systems, and device management platforms. Some of these accounts could be bought for as little as $10. We hope that in most cases these are protected by multi-factor authentication, MFA, but that may not provide sufficient protection if attackers already possess privileged access details. The researchers warned that these leaked credentials often serve as precursors to larger incidents, such as ransomware attacks. Organizations are urged to take immediate steps to secure their systems, review access permissions, and strengthen their defenses against info stealer malware. There's a link to Cybersecurity's blog in our show notes. Nearly 5,000 organizations have been impacted by a recent leak of FortiGate firewall configuration files. We've covered this story earlier. The files were posted online by the Belson Group, a cyber criminal organization, after exploiting a zero-day vulnerability, CVE 2022-40684, in 2022. Now, the files were router configuration files, which contain detailed information about network setups, including firewall rules, VPN configurations, and even email addresses. This type of leak is particularly dangerous as it provides attackers with insights into how networks are structured, enabling reconnaissance, lateral movement, and potentially devastating attacks with things like ransomware. While not all leaked files include email data, researcher Kevin Beaumont used what was there to compile a list of affected addresses to help organizations identify their exposure. Fortinet has urged affected organizations to update credentials, secure their systems, and monitor for signs of exploitation. The incident underscores the critical need for organizations to safeguard configuration files and ensure vulnerabilities in network devices are patched promptly. A major breach at education technology provider PowerSchool has exposed sensitive data for millions of students, parents, and teachers across North America. We covered the story last week. The compromised data, which included names, addresses, social security numbers, medical records, and academic grades, was accessed through PowerSchool's PowerSource support portal. The breach was discovered in 2024, but it was not caused by vulnerabilities in school districts, but rather by compromised credentials within PowerSchool systems. In response, PowerSchool is offering affected individuals 2 years of free credit monitoring and engaged cybersecurity experts to strengthen their defenses. However, frustration remains high as families and educators face the potential consequences of identity theft and fraud. Multiple lawsuits have been filed alleging negligence by PowerSchool in protecting this sensitive data. These lawsuits are demanding damages and stricter cybersecurity practices. The breach highlights the growing need for education technology providers to implement robust security measures as their platforms increasingly hold critical personal and educational data. And the U.S. energy and utilities sector is facing a growing threat. As just one example, ransomware attacks increased by 80% year over year, according to a report from TrustWave Spider Labs. Nearly half of all ransomware attacks in the sector occurred in the U.S., with the Hunters International Group responsible for 19% of incidents in late 2024. Phishing remains the most common attack vector used in 84% of breaches to gain initial access. Once inside, attackers frequently employ brute force techniques to access credentials and use remote desktop protocol vulnerabilities for lateral movement within these networks. The aging infrastructure compounds the risks and increases these vulnerabilities. In the US, much of the electrical grid is over 40 years old, and many operational technology systems lack modern protections or even proper segmentation. And classical prevention, such as updating or patching these systems, is challenging due to the need for continuous operation, again, leaving vulnerabilities open for exploitation. The consequences of these attacks go beyond financial losses, which average about $5.29 million per breach. But disruptions to power, transportation, healthcare, and other civic services can exponentially multiply the damage and the impact. The report calls for immediate investments in modernizing legacy systems, training employees to identify phishing attacks, and implementing OT-specific cybersecurity measures to protect this essential sector. There's a link to the report in the show notes. The vulnerability of our infrastructure is now a problem of critical proportion. We are studied and even attacked by nation-states and by cybercriminals. And while the report gives statistics, we'll be rerunning a show this weekend where an ethical hacker will walk you through a city's infrastructure. And while the show is almost a year old, the issues, unfortunately, have not changed substantially. Check it out on Saturday morning. And that's our show for today. You can reach me with tips, comments, and even occasionally with some constructive criticism at editorial@technewsday.ca. I'm your host, Jim Love. Thanks for listening.